Priyanka Chaudhary, and I'm the next lead of publicity and outreach for PES Open Source. I'll be your host for today's event. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for showing up here on a Sunday morning. I know college keeps us all super busy, and we really appreciate you joining us. And thank you so much, Kanal, for having this talk, hosting this talk. Right. So, we all understand the huge impact of open source software in our lives. Open source software is literally everywhere, from our Android phones to most programming languages. Now, imagine if this was the case for hardware as well. Imagine how far we could go if the domain of hardware wasn't just dominated by tech giants. Our first speaker, Kunal Ghosh, talks about exactly that, transforming the silicon industry through open source. Kunal Ghosh is the director and founder of VLSI System Design, also known as VSD. Prior to launching VSD in 2017, Kunal held several technical leadership positions at Qualcomm's test chip business unit. Kunal also holds a master's degree in electrical engineering from IIT Bombay, where he specialized in VLSI design and nanotechnology. In the last 9 years of VSC's journey in the field of open source, VSC has created close to 33 analog IPs. They've also partnered with IIT Madras to port Shakti RISC-V software to an open source hardware flow, worked with IIT Guwahati to transfer open source knowledge across more than 60 institutes in India. They've also recently tapped out an analog PLL chip. VSC was able to connect more than 30,000 people across 144 countries with the use of open source VLSI hardware. So yeah, this is all pretty amazing, Kunal, and thank you so much for joining us. Over to
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thanks for that brief introduction. So yeah, good morning everyone, and really glad you showed up on a Sunday morning. That shows your commitment towards the topic and towards the subject. So which is good. That's the first step. And most of you or most of the crowd actually don't know that I started from chemical. I'm from the chemistry background, and moving into silicon and open source, and it was a totally different ball game. So I'll conclude all those as and when we go further in the slides. So yeah, my name is Kunal Ghosh. This topic is about transforming silicon industry through open source. But though the topic looks very tough, very hard and all, what we'll do is instead of directly jumping into open source, let me give you a brief idea about what VLSI, what chip and what design is, and try to help you to connect it with your existing knowledge. So for example, many of you are aware of the C programming, Java programming, and things like that. And it actually all starts from that point. Let me try to explain you that part first, and then you can deep dive into the open source or into the VLSI part. So everyone must have used one or more of the softwares like Mozilla, Firefox, or Mozilla Firefox, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You can just type yes in the chat box if you're aware of the application software which I'm showing on the left top. Are you aware of these softwares? Just type yes in the chat box if you are. So the idea is the entire chip design or the VLSI flow is basically, the idea is how do we run this software on the hardware, and that's where exactly your VLSI design actually comes into picture. So let me take you through one of a simple flow. So this part is a black box for us, and let's say we'll call it as an operating system. So everyone knows about an operating system like Apple iOS, Windows 7, Linux. Just type yes if you are aware of the operating system. Are you aware that when you want to install a software on your Windows laptop, there is a .exe file which you double click and it just runs a couple of things? Yeah, you all must be aware of that part, right? So that is this particular exe file, and this exe file is actually something which is getting executed on your hardware. And from this part to this part is something which is your C++ programming, which you already do. Our task is to design this particular hardware in such a fashion that it is able to run this exe file. And now how all this happens, that is what VLSI is all about. Okay, so let's take an example of a C program. Everyone is aware of the C program that I'm showing over here. It's a simple calculator, and it's a simple stopwatch. And you must be aware of the syntax of the C++ programming. I believe second year, third year. I don't know whether we cover C, but what about this crowd? Are you aware of C programming or C++ programming? something of the, yeah. So idea is to run this C program on a hardware, to basically write, to basically build a hardware, build a logic gate design that will understand this C program, and that is what VLSI is all about. So what exactly happens is, this particular C program is first of all converted into an assembly language program. Now, all of you must have done the 8085 microprocessor programming in your second semester, third semester. 8085. Have you heard about 8085, 8086 microprocessor, microcontroller? And if not, it's fine. I think it will be coming in your third semester or fourth semester. Yeah, ARM and MIPS. So exactly, the ARM and MIPS are basically called as the architecture. So generally, you must have inside the ARM and the MIPS, you must have heard about add commands or subtract sub commands, add commands, store, load, and things like that. So that is what is basically called as the architecture. For example, if I want to run this particular C program on my laptop has got an Intel x86, so it's basically an Intel architecture. If I want to run the same C program on my mobile phone, it has got an ARM processor. It will be called as an ARM architecture. Similarly, now what happens when you purchase a laptop and you purchase a phone, the laptop company or the phone company needs to pay some amount of money to the for example, Dell. My laptop is Dell, so Dell has to pay some amount of money to Intel x86 for buying that particular architecture, for licensing that architecture. Your mobile phone companies, for example, Apple or Xiaomi, they have to basically send or basically purchase that IP, purchase the ARM architecture from ARM company. In case of the RISC-V is that kind of architecture which is open source. So basically, all the instructions that you see in the that is coming under the RISC-V bracket, that is basically open source. So you need not pay anyone any money to basically work on that particular architecture. That's basically called as open source. So ARM and MIPS. So you will be able to design a hardware using ARM architecture, but you will be not be able to sell that in the market unless and until you pay the license fee. So it's basically, so RISC-V comes into that bracket where there is no license fee. That is a very simple explanation of an open source platform. But anyways, we'll reach there once it is needed. So idea is, we'll take this particular clock, will this particular stopwatch, and convert it into a RISC-V architecture. And why RISC-V? Because it's open source and it's free. It's a free architecture. Now this particular command statements that you see in this particular thing, that needs to run on a hardware. And VLSI comes into a picture where you want to design this hardware which understands this particular architecture. It's, for example, if you want to add two numbers, let's say you want to add two numbers, you need a hardware, you need a logic gate that can actually, that logic can actually add those two numbers. Okay, you need that kind of hardware, and VLSI is basically mostly that topic that is basically built to design that particular hardware. Has anyone done this subject called as digital logic design in their curriculum? Is that one of your subjects in your yeah? So digital logic design, you must have heard of 1-bit adder, 2-bit adder, or 16-bit adder. Yes, yeah. So basically, that is basically the hardware. Now, what does that 1-bit adder will do? Okay. So for example, if you see this command over here, ADDI, and I have to add two different numbers. Okay. The architecture says that I have to add two numbers. So the hardware should be able to add those two numbers. It should be able to understand this particular instruction. And that is what VLSI chip design is all about. That is how VLSI chip design connects with the software world. So you have done this digital logic design, which comes somewhere between this part and this part. I'm going to show you that. And then finally, the chip design actually starts once you try to implement that particular digital logic design circuits on the real silicon. Okay, so I'll come to that slowly once we go there. So exactly what exactly happens is, in this case, let's say we are taking an example of an adder, the 1-bit adder which you have learned in your digital logic design. So let's say and your hardware, you must have heard of transistors, CMOS, NMOS, PMOS. Anyone has heard about CMOS or NMOS or PMOS or BJT or kind of thing? So you must be aware that any switch will understand only one and zeros. A switch is like a logic 1, logic 0. That is what standard electronic circuit means. Any electronic circuit will understand logic 1 and logic 0. That's what your hardware understands. So we should have a mechanism which converts your ADD instructions to ones and zeros. Okay, that is what actually happens in the .exe file which you click. So .exe file has got all these numbers, ones and zeros, which actually goes inside the hardware. And the .exe file has got a brief level understanding of your software. The software, whatever the software, the stopwatch that I've seen, the stopwatch software, the C program of that particular software is converted to ones and zeros in the .exe file. So that's why when you double click the .exe file, all those ones and zeros actually go inside the hardware. They do some operations, and they give you the feedback that you see on your screen. That is what the whole process is all about. Now, what is the first step to do that? Has anyone heard about Verilog VHDL in their curriculum? Do you have it, or you don't have it currently? Has anyone heard about Verilog VHDL kind of language? Okay, so basically, idea is yeah, most of you have. Is there anyone who don't have that? Is there anyone who has not heard of it? Just type no in the chat box if you haven't heard of it. Okay, so I think most of you have heard of it. So Verilog VHDL are basically called as the hardware description language. So for example, if you want to actually if you want to design if you want to design an adder, for example, let's say if you want to design 1-bit adder, you need not always write the you need not always build it using AND gate or gate. You can write something like let's say, for if I want to explain an example of a 3-input AND gate, I will just write y equal to, I'll just write something like this: y equal to a and d, like something like this: a and d, a comma b, sorry, y comma a comma b. Just see your chat box. I'm tapping it over there. Yeah, if I write this something of this sort, something of human understandable language, this will automatically understood by the software that it is a 3-input AND gate. It's a 3-input AND gate, something like this. So for example, if I write something like this, if select equal to 1, if select equal to 0, y equal to a1, and if select equal to 1, y equal to a2. If you see your screen, I have written a small program which represents a mux, okay, which basically represents a multiplexer. Has anyone heard about the multiplexer in your digital logic design? As anyone know? Yeah, so what I have written over there, that's basically a hardware description language for a multiplexer. So what does hardware description language actually does? It is able to write your logic in a simple fashion. Now for example, if I want to write this particular command, can you see this command add x6 extend x6? So I can just write y equal to add. I'll call one adder, for example, and I will write x6 comma x10, something of this sort. So if I just write that, provided I built an adder separately, you can just write this command to build your entire adder for adding x6 comma x10. Okay, so this is basically called as the hardware description language. So the hardware description language should be built in such a way that it understands ADD commands, it understands your ATT5, whatever the commands are there, sub commands, or store commands, load commands like that. The architecture, that's basically called as the architecture. So your hardware description language should understand, should be able to understand that particular architecture. That's the job of a hardware description language. Now, at every college, at least the undergrad that have seen, they stop at the hardware description language. But what happens after that? You need to actually take this particular hardware and print it on something called a silicon. And silicon is basically, let's call it a chip. As of now, let's call it as a chip. So you need to stick this particular hardware on a chip and get a real chip out of it. That's where the entire VLSI system design comes into picture. And that process is basically called as first of all, we want to synthesize. And what the synthesis actually means? Synthesis is basically converting the let's say we showed the mux definition over here. For example, when we had typed this one, the mux, the line which you had typed, if select equal to 0, y equal to a1, the line which you had typed, there should be some system that converts this line into a mux. There should be some system that converts this adder command that I see over here into a real hardware, into real logic gates. Okay, that step is basically called as the synthesis. Okay, so that is basically called as the synthesis step, and there are softwares like Cadence, Synopsys, and there are many tools that do that. They take they take the hardware language and they convert it into real gates. That is what the first step. Now, once you have the real gates, the next step is to basically place them just as you do. Has anyone seen a PCB, a printed circuit board? When you open your laptops and things like that, you see those printed circuit boards. Has anyone seen that? And if you have seen that, you must be seeing a lot of components on it. You will see a lot of chips, a lot of ICs on it. So very similar to a PCB, we have something called a silicon, which is there inside the chip. So silicon chip fundamentals are very similar to the PCB design, and there should be a mechanism that places these components that you see on my screen on a real chip, and that basically step is basically called as the physical design implementation. So just as on a PCB layout, I think for the PCB layout, most of you must have used KiCad or software like that. Has anyone done the PCB design anytime? So you must be using tools like KiCad, and then at the back end, it routes and does things automatically. Similarly, there are software tools like Synopsys and Cadence, which actually take these gates that you see over here and places it on the silicon, and that is where the physical design implementation of the that is step is basically called as a physical design implementation. Okay, so these are the different factors, or these are the different branches of your VLSI chip design. At least what I have seen in most of the colleges, the last curriculum is where we do the RTL, we do the hardware description language, the one which you see at the bottom over here. That's where the buck stops. And during my MTech, this part is something which is covered at MTech as an MTech as a PG program at IIT Bombay, and I think most of the colleges cover this as a part of the PG program. So if you look into hardware, this is something how your hardware looks like. Your basically the real chip looks like, and this particular real chip, if you miniaturize this chip is of a size of this is a size of 7 mm by 7. That is the size of a chip, and this particular chip, when you package inside inside a pack, it basically becomes a real integrated circuit. So if you have seen an Arduino board, has anyone seen this kind of board? Has anyone seen this kind of board? Just type yes if you have seen this kind of board. Okay, so if in this kind of board, if you see this particular chip, now if you try to if you expand that particular chip, if you expand this particular package, this is the chip that is there inside it. Now if I expand this particular chip, this is what it contains. I am just expanding this chip, and this is what it contains. Okay, you have this big, it is basically called as the pads, or you can think of it as doors, the door that you have at your house. This big doors or pads are used to communicate to the outside world, and this is how the hardware looks like. And now if you look into this particular hardware, it actually comes from here, and your software, the one which you're writing, your C program, that actually drives the size and the performance of your chip. Okay, so is that part briefly clear? What is this field about? I can we can take a minute for one or two questions if you want. Is there any questions in the understanding part of it? I mean, I'm very sure this, since this is the first time that you all might be seeing or exploring this thing, there will be a lot of doubts on how do we exactly do this and things like that. But was the overall picture clear? Where does this chip actually comes from? It is actually driven by your software that you write. It's driven by the C program, C++ program that you write. Okay, so now what is the need of the open source and the IPs and things like that? So these are quite heavy terms as of today for all of you. But let me give you a brief idea. So for example, when you the speech, you talk on your mobile phones. So the speech itself is an analog signal, and as we just discussed some time back, your chip understands a 1010 kind of digital signals. So you need something that should convert the analog to the digital signal, and that's basically called as an ADC, A to D converter. Has anyone heard about the A to D converter, or has anyone seen an A to D converter in real or heard about A to D converters? So that basically becomes an IP for the chip designer or for the VLSI engineer. That becomes an IP, and IP itself is like a huge industry. It's like $1 billion industry, which has been it has been driven by some of the key experts. So have you heard about SanDisk? Anyone has heard about SanDisk? the memory company, SanDisk or Western Digital right now, or you have heard about USB sticks, something like that. USB stick inside it has got something called as memory, and the main the memory the basic cell of the memory is basically called as SRAM, static RAM, and static RAM becomes an IP for us. That is how the IP is basically driven, and these are all basically huge, billion-dollar industry companies. So, has anyone heard about the clock? Has anyone heard about clock? The clock signal. Has anyone heard about it? Clock. So, your clock is something you must have heard about. 1 gigahertz processor or 2 gigahertz processor, things like that. Has anyone heard about those things? So that's basically driven by the clock, and the one which generates the particular block that generates a clock, that's basically called as the phased locked loop, PLL. Has anyone heard about PLL in the past? If not, it's fine. It's a quite advanced term, but that becomes an IP for us. That becomes an IP for a chip designer. So that's basically an importance of the IP. And currently, the tools which are capable of building these IPs are just okay. I'll come to the tooling part. So first of all, these are basically called as the IPs. Now, if you go to, there are three different people. There are three different kinds of people in the industry. There is one kind of people who work in the enterprise, let's say Qualcomm or Apple or these companies. So they already have access to Cadence, Synopsys, and Mentor tools. Has anyone heard about Cadence, Synopsys, and Mentor, or at least Cadence and Synopsys? If you're in Bangalore, I think you must have seen those companies, Cadence, Synopsys, and the on the outer ring road mostly. So every enterprise company, let's say every companies like Xiaomi or Broadcom or Western Digital or SanDisk, they have access to the Cadence Synopsys tools because they pay license fees to these companies. So that's why they have access to these tools. University, for example, PES College or IIT or any of the top universities, they also have access to Cadence Synopsys Mentor. I think you all must be having access to Cadence Synopsys Mentor under either the SMTP program, or there are some some college discounts which has been given to the university. I think most of you will have access to Cadence Synopsys and Mentor tools. But the problem really starts when you are a real designer. For example, you go out of your college, and if you want to implement your idea, so there is no such model currently available that you can actually design or at least prototype your idea currently in the market. That's where your open source come into picture. That's where you have this there is a need for the open source. And open source does a lot of things. You can actually build your entire chip using open source, and characterize, and you can find out at what gigahertz or what megahertz your chip actually works. For example, tomorrow, if you leave the college, and there is a gap of, let's say, 1 year for you to, once you have left the college and once you have entered the industry, so there is a 1 year of gap. In that gap, if, let's say, if you got a very good idea, let's say brilliant idea, where you come up with a new architecture, and now if you want to test it, so what can you do at that point of time? You neither can go back to the college to picturize your idea, because you've actually left the college, and now you're working in the industry, because right now you are yet to get jobs, and you're yet to get placed. So at that time, what you will do? So that is the period when open source actually comes into picture. And second thing, currently, if you, let's say, the situation that was these days about the pandemic situation, most of the tools were in the colleges, and the colleges basically shut down at 5 p.m. or in general, at least the colleges which I visited in Mumbai, the college timings were 9 to 5, and the licenses were all hosted in the colleges. And during the pandemic situation, there was no way to access those tools. At that time, what you will do? So that is the time where your open source actually comes into picture. We actually can't sit at home and do nothing. We should be doing experiments, and I'll show you some results I'll show you some very interesting results by second year, third year of engineering students across India, and some of them are in Karnataka, some of them are in Andhra, North, and Bangalore, and there are some colleges in West, in Mumbai, in Bengal. So the amazing things that they have done using open source, I'm going to show you that in a couple of moments from now. But they were able to do this because there was an access to the open source tools. Whatever architecture, whatever design I showed you in the beginning, they were able to implement. They were able to implement the IPs also, just because of the open source framework that we had. And I'll talk about that in a moment from now. That's where the need of the open source actually comes into picture. And this is just a mapping, so maybe this is not for you, this is for people who have idea about the cadence synopsis or mentor tools. So there is a mapping which we have done, open source can map to some of the tools. So these are some of the chips that that was designed using open source. And this was one of the PLIC programmable logic interrupt controller. This was a debug, and these are all small models of the RISC-V processor. And there was a chip that was manufactured end to end using open source. So that was done with eFabless. So these are some things. These are a few of the things that was achieved using open source. But currently, at this point of time, the important thing that you guys are looking for is, how do you basically get access to these tools and start designing your thing. So I think these are some of the blocks that was designed by one of our students from scratch. I think she was in her third year of graduation, and when she was assigned this particular project, and she was able to come this with this particular design. This is basically the layout, the final layout. And she was able to send a chip or manufacture a chip to Skywater Technology US just by sitting at her home and using the open source India tool. Okay, so that is so the word tape out is something when you send your when you send your designs to for manufacturing. That is the word that is called as the tape out, and students were able to do that, and then they were able to do that through this 10-week internship program. So what exactly is this internship program? That's basically something which we do for the students apart from the IP design that we do globally. So the 10-week internship program is basically when we when there are some fundamentals which along with the labs that gets covered in the 10-week internship program. I think the things that you saw just like a couple of slides back, those are basically covered from scratch in this particular 10-week internship program. The first 5 days are basic, the next 5 days are advanced. The next 8 weeks are basically pure internships where you're being given a design, you're being given a specification, and you have been given ideas and guidance where you can design your entire analog IP, the analog IPs that we have shown, and get a feel of the entire chip design flow. And then finally, so Google, Skywater, and they basically are now sponsoring students to manufacture their chips. So for example, if any one of you have designed your own IC or own chip, there is a facility that Google or eFabless or the Skywater Technology in US, they are ready to manufacture those chips based on what you have designed, provided your chips get selected. Last year, one of our students' chips got selected, and it was completely manufactured by Google. So this was the first chip that was manufactured in 2020 by a VSD student, and we aim to build a lot of freshers are basically building the IPs, and I'll show you a couple of results. And the idea is basically increase the number of IPs that is built by students. And every fresher is every fresher. When I say fresher, like zero knowledge about VLSI, because these student were having had zero, absolutely no knowledge about what VLSI and chip design is. That's what we call as a fresher, and we want them to build IPs. Actually, it is not our vision. The entire the government of India, and there are US government, they want all the freshers to start building IPs and chips for some of the small scale applications. And when you say you're getting trained on silicon, it's basically silicon is a word which is if you when you go into the industry, and if you tell them that you're a silicon, you have done a silicon proven training, that values that matters a lot to the industry compared to if you have just done training. That's where you must be seeing all those you must be seeing these IITs and NITs getting a preference in the placement season. And the reason is they are basically silicon proven, which means they have worked on real silicon. And there is a process, there is a 10-week to 12-week process that needs you to be enabled for silicon. But this is a very strong word. If you tell in the industry, let's say after you graduate in the fourth year, if you tell in the industry that you're silicon proven, you have been trained on silicon proven, that has a lot of value. That has got a lot of value inside it. And these are the proof. So we don't do placements especially, but there was an agency in one of the countries who wanted to look into our placement results. Though we don't promote placement, we don't guarantee placements and things like that. But we did a general, we just did a general overview of where the students are. So 8% people have got employed in the industry, and about 14% people have got internships in the VLS industry. So 20% people actually directly got recruited in the entire industry. I think 5% of the people have got PhD, MS, and MTech offers. There were about 11% of people who switched their domain. So they were doing they were in the IT industry for a long time. I think for 6 to 7 years they were into software domain, and within 6 to 9 months they were with us. They got trained with us, and there were a couple of things that they worked on in this particular field, and then then they switched to VLSI domain. So that is about 11% of the people actually got switched, and overall about 67% people actually said that it has actually improved their skills in the existing domain. So in a nutshell, the 12%, if you leave this 12%, there are close to 88% of the people who have taken our VSD workshops and courses, and they are doing well in the industry. This is something that we don't guarantee. It's just that we get this information from the students, and we have close to 30,000 students right now, and many of them, at least 88% of them are doing well in some of the industry, or in some of the countries they are doing well. Reachability till now, whatever we have done, I never had a chance to interact with PES. I don't know why, because the 50 universities, the 50 to 60 universities that we have targeted, they come under a bracket called as it's called. The government has a program. It's called EICT, and CDAC, and those colleges are a part of it. I am not sure about PES college. I need to check with some of the management that why are they not a part of the infra. But in general, this was one of the device physics workshops that was done at NIT Manipur. It is again a college in the north side. This was the largest online open source EDA workshop that was conducted, about 50 universities, about 1,800 participants at one shot. So 5-day workshop, 1,800 participants at one shot. This was done through MNIT Jaipur. Silicon Institute of Technology, again, this is Professor Saroj. He and his second year and third year students were actually able to fabricate a chip using, they use closed source, but the students were able to fabricate a chip under the guidance of Professor Saroj. They were able to fabricate one of the that chip had I think memories and one of the analog IPs, and they were able to tape it out with the help of students. So that's the potential that the students currently has. This is in Mumbai. So there was again another open source EDA workshop that was conducted, live stream from Mumbai, and spread across the entire country. And this was about 250 plus participants only on Zoom. This was done only on the Zoom. These are all pre-pandemic. This was again a RISC-V based workshop. So we have our own international instructors who basically do workshops. She is Calista Redmond, CEO of RISC-V Foundation, who basically works a lot on the RISC-V part. And we did this particular workshop again, 5-day workshops. Then there was strange things that happened. There was an 8th grade student. Who actually took our workshop, and he completed the workshop. And it's not something that we want them to do. It's just that they mentioned that they were from 8th grade, and 8th grade, which means I think he was about 13 years old. So there are people as young as 13 years old, or this person Nile, he was a 7th grader, and 7th grader, which means he's actually 12-year-old. He's 1 year yeah, I think this guy was 1 year older to Nile. Nile was 12-year-old, and people like 12-year and 13-year-old are entering into the VLSI industry through these workshops. So I mean, this is something was very mesmerizing, because the content that we have that actually uplifts students as young as Nile and Nicola. So they were able to grasp the content, and the content was not very easy. It was towards the end, it's really goes it really becomes a bit tough. The day 1, day 2 of the workshops are pretty easy, and day 3, day 4, day 5 is something which picks up. But these students were able to pick it up at a very good pace. So I'm sure this is a good source of motivation for all of us. Like even they are a good source of motivation for us as well, because if they are starting so young, just imagine the amount of people, the amount of the 8th grade and 9th grade students that is there across the world who can get started on RISC-V and VLSI. That's something was amazing for us. And everyone must have heard of Shakti processor. Has anyone heard of Shakti processor, which was developed and built everything in India? Has anyone heard of it? Just type yes if you have heard of Shakti processor. So that's where 2018 we were working with Professor Kamakoti, and this picture was taken by one of our one of our members in the ISA conference, and they wanted this kind of team to execute the chip design program, or the VLSI chip design program in India. And this is Professor Kamakoti. Has anyone does anyone know Professor Kamakoti over here? Or if no, it's fine, because he's the one who led the entire Shakti microprocessor effort in the country. So he was the one who led that entire effort. And Professor Rabe. So everyone must have, I don't know, no, this is very young, this is very early for all of you to look into Professor Rabe, but I think the PG students know about Professor Rabe. So every fresher who is into VLSI, the first book that he refers is from Professor Jan Rabe, and that is how he's so popular inside the in the industry. So that is he was one of our he's one of our speakers in one of the conferences. Okay, so that's all I had. And finally, my name is Kunal Ghosh. This is me. I've done my master's in nanotechnology from IIT Bombay, and it's basically called as electron beam lithography tool. So as I said, this entire work was completely chemistry. I was mostly into the chemical side of the VLSI, never into digital side. And it was just my interest that I wanted to enter into the digital side. So I did a similar 10-week, or you can say 3-month of R&D project within IIT Bombay, and that's where I landed up into the digital area of it. I've led a team of associate design at Qualcomm for MSM and memory test chips, right from 40 nanometer till 60 nanometers. Then I was in Cadence as a technical lead AE, and almost 18 customers. I was managing almost 18 customers. The top customers: Nvidia, Samsung, LG, and Qualcomm, companies like that. And our company has been into open source since last 10 years, and today close to 30,000 VSD users access. For America's 144 plus countries are learning and building analog IPs using just by using open source. So yeah, thank you everyone for your attention. This is my number, this is my website. If anyone wants to reach me, you can take a snapshot of this particular slide. You can contact me anytime. WhatsApp is something which is very easy for me. I'm very much available on WhatsApp and Slack. And yeah, if you have any questions, I think this is the right time to bring it up. So there is a message. Shivani Shah. Shivani, are you the same Shivani who has been the TA for our course?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. So everyone, I think you must. Shivani was one of our teaching assistants for the RISC-V workshops. So she has attended our workshop. Plus, she has been the teaching assistant for our workshop. So I didn't know you are from PS College.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
I wanted to attend the talk, so I've joined.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know that. So yeah, This is about the entire thing, and there is one other thing that you all should know, that what people from all over the country has done. So if you look into the IP by interns, and you can see these are the students from different colleges: NIT Jamshedpur, VTU, National Institute of Roorkela, DTU, SRM.
ಮೇಲಾಗ ಬಂದಿತ್ಲೆಪ್ಪ ಯಾರ್ದು ಅದ ಅವಾಗ ಅವಾಗ ಎದ್ರಾಗ ರಿಜಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ನಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't understand. Okay, so NIT Rourkela, Mumbai, National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli, Mumbai, then again Sonipat, NIT Jamshedpur. So people from all over the country, from all over India, were actually working with us for a lot of the IPs. And there are these are the students. There are, like, second year, third year students who started very early in this particular domain, and now most of them have either got calls from the industry, and couple of them have already got offers from the industry. So because of the kind of work that they have been doing with PhD for the last couple of months. Okay, so get inspired. I think this is the field that is going to be emerging, because if you must have heard about neuromorphic computing, you must have heard about edge intelligence, and all those are now coming back to the hardware, because using software for those kind of tasks will take a lot of latency time. And now, so everything is moving to hardware, and if it is moving to hardware, I think that they will need a lot of chip designers within the country. And all of you, just stay motivated, stay focused on your on this particular field, explore a lot about this particular field. And I think all of you are at the right age that you are introduced to this particular topic. Yes, so that's all I had for everyone. Just stay focused, and all the best. Yeah, anyone has any questions, you can bring it up right now. So as a complete beginner, how do I start contributing to open source? So before starting contributing to the open source, you need to get to know what is the entire open source framework. For that, just start with what is open source. What is open source VLSI? If you just Google about open source VLSI, and then start from that point, that is a starting point to understand what is open source, and then you can start contributing to open source based on your interest. Best thing is to build some IPs using open source, which is, again, you go to our website and you will find a lot of documents on that. Just you learn a lot about what is open source, and then that's how you can get started. Okay.
Hi, am I audible?
You have to speak a bit louder, but little bit. Yes, tell me.
How about now?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ritinder Sidhu.
Hi.
I teach here.
Okay.
So good to see, that you're working on encouraging open source for chip design.
Hmm.
So, you showed the interesting slide about how you can map different commercial tools onto open source ones. But as you're probably aware, one of the key issues is once you come down to the actual, whether it's so basically it is DRC, right? So
Hmm.
you basically need access to some sort of PDK process design kit, and then you need some DRC software, especially as you go to smaller and smaller feature widths.
Hmm.
So there, do you have so as far as I'm aware, there's pretty much no alternative in open source, but
Hmm.
you have managed to get projects done.
Hmm.
So is it using Google,
Sky 130
that
shuttle. Yes.
Skywater thing,
Yes. Yes.
or
Yes.
is it so how what any inputs on that?
Yeah, it is using Google Skywater. So yes, PDKs are something which needs to be real, and Sky 130 recently open sourced their entire PDK. All the DRC rules, timing models, everything is now open sourced by Sky 130, and we use that mostly for our for building the open source framework, and that is what we had actually manufactured last year. PLL.
Okay. Um, so also, so it is good to see that you have put the IP that was developed by the students onto GitHub, right? So I
Hmm.
think that is quite a useful thing to do.
Yes.
But I was just wondering if you actually do some development of any open source CAD tools as well, or you basically focus on teaching open source CAD tools.
So development CAD tools has been taken by eFabless. eFabless looks into the development part and managing the repo. We just use it for designing. We are just like Qualcomm, and eFabless is
So is
just like Cadence.
eFabless a sort of sister startup for you?
eFabless is our partner. It's our CAD partner. So, for example, Qualcomm designs chips, and Cadence builds the tools. So something like that. We are kind of Qualcomm who we use the tools, and OpenLane, Open Circuit Design, they and eFabless, they are the ones who develop the tools. Does that answer your query?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
You're not audible. Hello.
yeah. So
Ah.
that's fine. That answers my question. Thanks.
Oh, okay, okay, fine, fine. Thank you. So there are a couple of more queries on the this thing. Do you have any upcoming workshop? Yes, there are. You can if you can visit the website, you will find the upcoming workshops. I'll just point you to that one. So yeah, I've just given you one link. You can go to that. You'll be conducting workshops on similar topics. Yes, I have just pointed to the link. From someone from CS background, how could I get started about chip designing and basics of the same to understand literature around the same? Yeah, this is good question from the CS background. So as I said, I am from, I was from the chemistry background. And for me, jumping into the chip design was out of my interest because I wanted to learn a lot about chip designing. So what I did was at IIT Bombay, there is something called as 3 months of R&D project. So we opted for that R&D project under digital, and that was a very high intensity project that was conducted by Professor Madhav Desai. So everyone must have heard about the Ajit processor from IIT Bombay. Ajit was one of the so along just like we have Shakti from Made in India, we had another something called as Ajit, which was again made in India, and that was by Professor Madhav Desai. So I did my 3 months of R&D project under him because I wanted to learn more about the chip designing, digital designing, and things like that. That's where that's where I learned in the matter of 3 months. Or so that is what has been replicated as a 8 week, as a 10-week internship program that we do with the students. So it just takes a good high intense workshops and internships for you to get started, and then from that point onwards you are all on your own. So for example, the chip that I just shown, or the students list that I had shown, they had zero clue about what is VLSI. They had they knew nothing, and from there to building IPs, that itself is it's an entire VLSI or the chip design journey. And that's how you get started. You start with some project. You can start with the projects which I've shown on my website. You can start take up one of them and start understanding that, and that is a good starting point for all of you. But the idea is get started early because there are a lot of policies and industries that are coming around the chip design starting post pandemic, and these are some insights which we are aware of because we are the one who are driving some of the programs within our country, and there will be a huge need for IP designers, chip designers within our country, using the Chandigarh. So there is a foundry in Chandigarh, either using that foundry, or globally there is a deficit of chip designers. And since the VSD, our company will be running some of the major programs around chip designing. So the good idea is to get started early, to get excited early first of all, because unless and until the topic excites you, it's of no use. So the topic first of all should be exciting. You should be getting excited about that topic, and then start getting early into this particular field, because there are things that is coming up in the area of chip design, and there is a deficit of chip designers. Okay. All right. So if that is all, there is something which we do at the end of every webinar. We take a quick picture of everyone, because just like memories for for us and for all of you. So in that case, we encourage everyone to open up their cameras and show this V in front of the camera, so that I can take a quick print screen, and we get to know each other. And plus, all of you have my phone number. You can anyway anytime contact me if you need any guidance or something like that. But first of all, let's take a quick picture, so that we know that we all of us know that we had done this workshop on 14th Feb 2021, which is a Valentine Day. So this is just a remembrance for all of us. So everyone, I'll encourage everyone to turn on their cameras, and so everyone, yeah, I think Satvik, Mihir, Bhumika, Arjun, Madhav, Hari Prasad, Pranav, Suhas, Spurti, Akhilesh, Shivani, Vaibhav, Suhas, yeah, all of you, just turn on your cameras, and let's make this thing memorable.
Right.
Akhilesh,
Kunal, thank you so much for that inspiring talk. I've always
yeah,
wanted to get more involved with hardware, but like I wasn't sure how to, but like now I know. So thank you so much for that.
yeah, sure, sure,
And yeah,
sure,
and everyone, can you please turn on your cameras?
yeah,
It's a very cute tradition.
yeah. So I have like thousands of pictures with all my students in the past. We do this. We have a collage of all the pictures. So
That's so nice. It makes
yeah,
everyone feel so included.
exactly. Anaga, you also, Chetan, Vaibhav, Akhilesh, Ritinder, Siddhant, Sanket, Chabi, Bhumika. All right. All right. I think Siddhant, Nandana, Ritinder, Akhilesh, Vaibhav. Uh, yeah. Now do this V in front of you and we'll take a snapshot. Do this V in front of your camera. I'll take a quick print screen. Okay. And a smile. All right, great job. So thanks everyone for joining. I will send this snapshot to your coordinator, and maybe she can propagate this among all of you.
Yes,
Okay.
I definitely will do that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Guys,
And I
thank
think
you so much for joining us. Also, after a quick break of about 15 minutes, we will have Dr. Ritinder Sidhu's talk. So please join the Google Meet link that we'd sent you for that. Just please remember to switch. And thank you so much, Kunal.
So, a quick question. So, precisely what time will the talk start?
Sir, whenever you're ready at like 11:40, if that's
Fine.
okay with you.
Fine. No problem.
Okay. So please be there by 11:40, guys.
all right. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Have a nice day. Bye.